I'm a slave to story. I like to adopt a style that'll work to best tell the tale. I always say a good, filmmaker or journalist, your job is to find a good story and then don't fuck it up.
The words, same words. Hey, no diamonds would be bought by this man if I took a lucky strike and hit the jackpot. When I rot in hell or prosper, Cottontail the opera or just plot to tell the officer demons and the missions that I've been in.
Sports movies, whether it's documentaries or it's scripted dramas, sports movies are like cheating. I mean, it's some of the easiest storytelling to do in that sports inherently contain all of kind of the essential ingredients for drama. We were doing the U for ESPN 30 for 30, the first go round, and we interviewed a quarterback, Bernie Kosar. Bernie was famous for having been even more successful in real estate and business after he left the NFL. And we interviewed him, and literally 2 months, not even, after that, front page story in the Miami Herald by Dan Le Batard, Kosar had gone bankrupt.
Fulfill the dreams that made this beat. It would be strange at first, I think, but I'll adjust fine. Make my money worth my time, and all of us shine. Invest in my friends.
There was a personal story that, of a guy that I had known and interviewed, and then all of a sudden the idea that this wasn't necessarily an isolated incident, but there was some sort of greater potential epidemic.
Who would I be with money? What would I do? Would I stay true?
Every time we start a new project, I do a, kind of, let's call it a style board, or an informal style board. Really, it's just a series of discussions, brainstorming sessions, emails, images, songs, or film scores. We start with a look. And in this case, to me, it was obviously more about money than it was about sports. And so instead of going with kind of sports iconography, we went with money. And so the first thing I wanted to do was kind of create these backdrops that were really macro images of money, almost abstract. It's really zoomed in on elements, the grain and the various kind of florals and artwork of a bill, and that's what made up the backgrounds of the interviews. I wanted to do this moneyfication effect, which was it's a filter that we created to moneyfy the still images. You start a conversation with the director of photography, with the editors, with the composers, and try to come up with an aesthetic. We originally conceived Broke as a series, not as a one-off feature documentary. We wanted to profile a different athlete every week. ESPN, it's a little tougher for them to program. That's why they like the one-offs,
Let's get busy, yeah. Who's with me? All these lights and they all so pretty. Just one night to live like kids. See, I'm on fire and it's my city.
They said, why don't you do it as a feature doc? And that's how we kind of reimagined it that way. So instead of being about the people, it became more about the problem. If we cast the net as wide as we could, we had shoots in Miami, New York, Bristol, Connecticut, and these were all on different occasions. We didn't have the luxury of being able to kind of schedule a solid or consistent production period because it was all contingent upon access to the individual athletes.
1 foot in the government, 1 foot in the soul. Mix up all the rubbish, then turn that grit to gold.
We wanted people who were successful in business, like Jamal Mashburn, guys who had filed for bankruptcy, like Bernie Kosar, guys who were in denial, perhaps, about the finances, guys who had some problems with addiction. Pete McCann's, for example, who I understand was just arrested again in the last month or two. So we wanted to kind of get a good cross-section of players from different leagues, different sports, and we were kind of in different states or different stages of their lives, and had each enjoyed different levels of success and perhaps failure, some of them. And this is a very sensitive subject. The kind of classic persona or character of an athlete is to be a very prideful individual. So that's really what posed a challenge here. And interesting, the psychology or the profile of a professional athlete, which is part of the reason why many of them are very successful. It's also something that works against them a great deal in this subject matter, and it certainly worked against us. By the time we got into post-production, MLB, the NBA, and the NHL refused to license us footage simply because of the subject matter. If you Google David Stern's interview with the Wall Street Journal that he gave just a few months ago, he refers to Broke. He brings it up. He's watched it several times, in fact. He refers to Broke as sloppy and mildly racist. And when I first heard it, I wasn't sure if he was talking about our documentary or his tenure as the commissioner of the NBA. When the first 30 for 30 volume 1 ended, there's a lot of discussion about what they would do about 30 for 30. And for a while, they had something called ESPN Films Presents, that were basically 30 for 30s, but that was the brand they were under now. It was ESPN Films Presents. And yeah, people, I get hit up on social media or emails, and I get a great idea for a 30 for 30. I got a great 30 for 30. So it just kind of became a brand. So they decided finally they were going to do 30, they're going to bring the brand back, 30 for 30, and do a volume 2. They decided that Broke would be the first 30 for 30 of the second volume. And that brought a whole other set of strain and pressures. We had a rough cut screening at the Tribeca Film Festival. And we were pretty much on the verge of delivery. And then all these ESPN executives came to that screening, and there was a whole new round of discussions and a whole new round of notes. And it was all of a sudden, what we thought was done, well, nearly finished, was all of a sudden back in production again. I told you earlier that the job of a filmmaker is to find a good story and then don't screw it up. And the way that I always advise to accomplish that is RAS, relevance, access, style. Relevance. You have to ask yourself, who gives a shit? Access is like the secret to life, Access to what? Access to anything. Access to money, access to actors, access to a script, to equipment, to talent. Style, where they say it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. I don't think Broke was a resounding success, because I think that it fell victim to kind of a lot of the tampering and the tinkering. So I think that at some point we kind of had to sacrifice the original vision in order to just get the thing done. Personally, I didn't find it to be as creatively successful or fulfilling as some of our other projects. But I think that's the lesson. It's either be more realistic with your original vision, and or compromise it less so that you don't sacrifice the project for the sake of making everybody happy when you can never make everybody happy.
Fuck the slides, won't buy. Why is why? Till we fry. Watch the song, stay alive. Won't slice of devil's pie. Drugs and thugs.
The most heartening thing for me that came out of it was the reactions from college athletes on Twitter saying things like, I'm not going to be in broke too.